A mysterious cross forms on the back of the hand, hiding a magic that appears as 4 sharp branches or 2 thin offshoots. The 4th cross flashes like lightning. It has a short range but hits like thunder. Its quick shot cuts through the air, activates instantly, and is ideal for close combat. The 3rd cross roars with fire and a wide area of effect, ideal in the heat of mid-battle, while the 2nd rains electric shocks on enemies from afar, making up for power with a huge attack radius. The 1st cross on this hero's arm is cold and flawed and gives no strength in battle. The fire only smolders and its heat is weak, almost lost in the echoing strikes and the rumble of battle. Even a magic beam doesn't obey him, and this cross seems far too artificial, built for machines, not for life. In the arms of darkness, the hero touches the 1st cross. Power floods his body, and a meteor unlike any in battle flashes overhead, changing everything. The 1st cross reacts only to artifacts, and when you touch it with a magic tool, its power awakens, while ordinary things remain silent like cold stone. The island drowns in a meteor shower, fiery stones pouring from the sky as magic, fed by clashing powers, mercilessly destroys everything like the echo of a legendary curse. As with the previous method, this one works without extra equipment, with no extra noise or clicking, and everything remains simple and convenient. To bring the magical instrument to life, it first needed a primary cross, and even that required patience. A slow, steady counting of time where each moment stretched like a drop of wax. Activation left a bitter sense of powerlessness. Movements grew sluggish, and irritation filled the eyes in response to that sly trick. Far out in deep space, according to legend, beings of unfathomable power dwell, and the air hums with that mystery like distant thunder, also called divine beasts. He searches for those who doubt their own magic, and challenges anyone who thinks his power is flawed and his spells are weak. The final surge of strength flared through him. Every muscle tensed, and the air seemed to tremble from the sudden burst. The one who summons a meteor shower stays ahead of the weak, but even they must keep growing and build strength from within. Such a cross on the shoulders makes each step heavier, leaving a person on narrow paths where dreams echo faintly behind them. The 1st path leads to the mysterious magic of the celestial beasts, whose mighty spells raise the dead, bend time, and build strength. But the beasts themselves guard the way, and only the brave can grow stronger. The situation is confusing, like the old dilemma of which came first, the egg or the chicken. The chance of such a turn of events seems vanishingly small, almost impossible. Another choice is waking in a new body and feeling its unfamiliar breath, which may not match the dream, or the path may lead the hero in a completely unexpected direction. The 3rd path is to find allies who will strengthen you in battle as you confidently look around for a dependable shoulder nearby. That thought settled in him long ago, when a clock ticked softly in the room and the half-darkness brushed the walls. Hundreds of times he charged forward, eyes blazing, but each time his comrades quietly fell back, their faith in their own story fading. Reliable allies do not run when the ground burns under their feet. Calling the demons might seem an option, but the heart warns they will be the first to turn their backs. They want to leave people with a brutal choice, death or suffering, yet dragons and other magic-wielding races are capable of more. The dragons hissed softly to each other. The chance will come only once. 100 years ago, Gaius almost wiped them out. But now there is no fear, and someone has proposed flooding the earth with blood to cleanse the world of people. A moment of vengeance. Hai suddenly drops onto the monster's brow, and the dragon flinches, stunned and holding its breath as if still believing in a chance of rescue. "Forgive the pain my parade caused," he said, still breathing and trembling under the scorching sun. Voices in the hall fell quiet, and before them, as if from a dream, Hai himself stood alive, though 100 years of forgetfulness had shrouded his name and no step or whisper about him had been heard in that time. Time slipped through his fingers as he sank into his research, the grove gently saying it had not come for quarrels, and a hush of surprise hung in the air. The air smells of burnt bark, and Guy wonders where to find the strongest dragons, or at least one whose eyes still hide an untapped fire. The monster growled that a truly mighty dragon would already be mere prey, because this one would have chosen him as its victim. But the hunt had not yet begun. Arrogance and foolishness show on his face, but not a single blow left a mark, as if chopping stone. Most thought death was just a dragon, but he was born of cunning, almost living magic, and when power was aimed at the spell's heart. The fire melted before their eyes and left everyone stunned. The magic did not vanish into the air. Guy felt its pulse in his palm and decided to send that powerful current back to the dragon. A magical burst bounced off his palms and flew straight back, hissing through the air toward the opponent. One strike sent the dragon crashing down with a thunderous groan, and the others stood stunned that in a single moment the mightiest had fallen. For him, breathing was a complex formula. Touch the weak spot and the whole magic chain falls apart, letting strength slip through your fingers, and hunters aimed exactly at that weakness. Rhodogonus brought the topic back to the majestic dragons, and after losing his informant, quietly asked the room if someone would stand in for him. The north fell silent here. A temple stands there, and in its shadow, the dragon of darkness breathes fire, he said, and a faint rumble pulsed through the air. Was that dragon really the one people whisper about? And could its species be told from the scales that shimmered in the dark as if alive? It turned out the dragon came to rescue people for shiny jewels. It is hard to admit, but his power is real. If it were not, he would have turned to ash long ago. He decided the dragon must go, but Guy kept gathering allies, so the news did not change the previous plans, and everything remained the same. Rhodogonist gave thanks, and decided to try his luck right here, and the dragons exchanged a hard look, their eyes flashing like sparks before a storm. A sharp realization hit, and all the dragons were together, their scorching breaths roaring overhead, making any lone defense seem useless like a shield of cobwebs. Everyone thought one blow would not hurt him, but several would be too much. The dragons celebrated their victory, and without Guy their triumphant roar filled the air, and the world seemed to belong only to them. The blow rang out, sharp and muffled, warning that it was too soon to count on an easy victory, and that things could still turn out differently. Shock mixed with confusion, his mind could not grasp the power of the amazing magic, so the sudden attack forced him to react sharply. That kept him alive, Guy said, explaining that breaking him with magic was almost impossible, then stepped forward, preparing to show how to tame his power. The raw magic stone, nicknamed Shitstone, is useless for spells, because Glaz will fill it with magic to the brim, so it has no purpose. These objects crack under strain, unable to contain this turbulent whirl of magic. The spell is woven into the stone's heart. The bond trembles as if alive and holds back the destruction, but the energy already pulses inside, shaking and ready to burst out and consume everything around. It was clear that everything was slipping away, so Beggins decided to hold the monster with his own breath because the barrier under its pressure could collapse at any moment like an icicle in the sun. Two blades met, and in that final spark, the words formed, "Goodbye, there will be no return." Rewarding information about the Dragon of Darkness was worth gold. Guy wasted neither words nor lives, and every act, like a bolt of silver thunder, had its price. Under the vaults of the Temple of the Dark Dragon, the air smells of damp and old stone. Lanterns flicker in the half-light and shadows glide silently along the walls. Mana thrummed in the air, the creature's heart beating nearby, and the grove instantly understood that this dragon was no legend but a real danger, and the Winged One's youth would not make the fight easy. "He will be the last to die," the dragon said, asking why the man had come, and Guys quietly said he had heard there was a dragon who saves people in exchange for something precious. Inside was a delicate silk thread that shimmered in the light and was set with tiny twinkling gems. Darkness whispered, "It's cold, touching your shoulder," asking what your wish was and what you would put on the scales in return. The scent of adventure was tempting, so he cautiously offered to join as a companion and said they'd discuss the reward later. They needed to impress the creature, an equally powerful ally who would stand beside them in battle. The creature promised a new weapon and to strengthen the dragon, and the protagonist immediately asked several pointed questions. Pulling is a real test, heavy and stubborn as ever. And when you pull, the ground crumbles under your feet, and the wind burns salty tears on your face. Turning to the shadow, the man said he would walk the path where he needed the very one who had promised power nearby. The boy quietly thanked him for his faith, It turned out everything was different from how it first appeared. The dark dragon doesn't back down and only helps those who pay the price. A cold hiss threaded his voice. His scales shimmered with damp shadows, and the air smelled of ash. If it keeps going like this, death is inevitable, and a merciless step is already poised over him. The Lord will decide if he will be near, and only he knows where this road will lead. A creature may promise to take on any task, but dragons are said to be endlessly greedy, and no gem will make them work, not even the richest treasures. The stone hides power and mystery for dragons. Many meanings hum in it, and the young creature may not realize this as it touches the cold surface. The monster's rough voice rumbled, asking where the item came from. The dragon insisted he knew everything, remembered finding the jewel at the foot of Mount Diarona, and then began to tell the story. The wild winds of the Ranchia Mountains remember when the evil dragon King Gabalos, the mightiest of all, ruled with an iron paw, leaving thunder, ash, and thousands of lives snuffed out. And this stone is part of his heart, hiding the blood relic called the Dragonbane Stunner. Suddenly the dark dragon realized how treacherously he had been tamed, how a cold human hand had forced him into someone else's will, and a cry rose in the silent night. The murder had just happened, the smell of blood still in the air, and Gay, swallowing his fear, began to explain what had happened. A sword stroke, a hesitation in his gaze, and in a moment he understands that the creature is weak, and everything unfolding seems part of a story already written. The hero held his breath, fingers closed around a warm pebble as the dragon hesitated and its dark eyes flickered. Everything would change the moment that one word was spoken. Smiling, he said he would have 2 identical stones. The dragon beat its wings sharply. The air hummed and tension hung in the air. You will not make me bow my head before them. My heart is racing and my eyes hold an unquenchable flame of resistance. For Guy, this deal was a real find, and we must not pass a cruel sentence, so let him seek his own salvation from the sharp, throbbing pain of death. The monster slowly bowed its head and quietly murmured an apology, while KS stood confused, catching the looks around him but still unable to understand exactly what he had done wrong. They are willing to do anything he asks, as long as it does not involve the sin of murder. Don't be so openly bold! The eyes opposite flashed coldly, like a gust of wind bursting through the window. Folov's eyes gleamed with greed as he told it to take as much as it wanted, and the creature kept begging for mint and nuts, clutching its paws and trembling with hope. The castle ruins lay beneath the ash, and the dragon's breath sent stones and fear flying, making the air tremble. He wanted to make sure the person he was talking to could hear him, and Guys softly promised to spare his life if he stood nearby, since no dragon kills without reason. He remembered the creature whispering hoarsely that dragons were too proud and vain, and that showed even in the smoke of battle. The question that tormented him was what he wanted when he killed Diavolo. Deus, with a faint smile, reassured him not to worry and said he would soon surpass that kid. The legend came alive. A lizard stood before everyone, an evil dragon king. But Guy admitted his powers were not so fearsome and asked if he could stand among people without hiding in his scales. Dragons that can turn into humans breathe tongues of flame in their true form, but Hai believes only their human shape gives them real power, magic, and the agility of true wizards. Their magical schemes are simple and unadorned, so they will never get a taste of higher-level magic no matter how hard they try. Hands reach forward, bringing the obstacle closer as their support clears the path. Sudden changes ran through her body, and the girl froze, unable to believe the hands, the voice, the scent in the air were hers. A sudden sense of nakedness swept through her, and her hand reached for the dress, the fabric seeming to wait for her, quiet and fragrant, made for this moment. A light fog in my head and the thought of how little I know about the world, as if I had only just left a school desk yesterday and that helpless simplicity belongs only to the very young. Uncertainty colored her voice, as if the dress was too bold for Iris the dark dragon. Then her eyes lit up when she saw you and joy swelled in her chest. The dragon's protective power stays with her even in human skin, so she needs no armor between her body and plain clothes, and the memory of the weapon hit the boy sharply. They called her fragile, but the young man beside her carried a pride that made the air tighten, catching his strength in every movement. Shining magical steel, feather light, brings power even to tiny children's hands, performs real wonders, soars upward and grants strength and easy movement. Nobody could have imagined he would be pulled into all this, the boy insisted, and he truly believed she knew nothing. Despite the pain, he doubled over several more times as if frozen by anxiety. The soft magical steel coating mixed with a mantle alloy lay smooth and even. No force could bend it, and it held its shape like a clear note in the silence. The blade whistled through the air, still unbroken, but instead of slender grace it carried a raw power, the gleam of a barbarian axe. The magical device chimed suddenly. He looked surprised, not remembering touching it, and the girl raised an eyebrow in curiosity and asked what it was. The moment a demon stirs nearby, the detector flashes a warning light and beeps, and when you touch the button, the device takes you straight into the heart of danger. Tired of every demon dying the same way, Guy changed tactics so the system highlighted only enemies whose eyes burned with diabolism-level fire. True struggle with the strong is an invisible desire that lives in other people's eyes, and the girl felt lost, unable to understand how ordinary people could like this trial. After asking about her plans, I watched Iris move confidently on all fours, and in the silence, Guy believed the enemy would be stunned by the sight and that everything could change even here. Enemy fury blanketed the city like a black cloud, and Lord O, an 8th grader, clenched his fist and stood motionless, breathing in the damp smell of worry. At that moment, a cry cut through the air. A desperate soul rushed into a fierce duel, and the clash of weapons rang out all around. The 8th rank fell from their hands like autumn leaves, and these two 11th grade students were both called Gerald, known throughout the kingdom for their strength and fearlessness. Over the field hung the Witch of Doom, and nearby Ryder, the Black's demagogue, spoke mocking words while their promises and threats swirled in the wind. Winds whistle through the towers, crossbows are drawn along the border of the kingdom of man, and dawn smells of alarm. The yard buzzed with children's laughter as they played hide-and-seek, and one of the boys suddenly noticed someone slip like a shadow between the walls behind the house. In the group of friends, he stopped breathing as something terrible swept over him. A chill ran down his skin, and the air smelled of cold and worry. A massive ogre blocks the light. Its broad feet thud heavily on the ground, and its breath smells of ash and old blood. The ogre's weapon flashed through the air, and a single instant of a hoarse moan and sharp pain ended the child's life. They informed the commander that the search was over, not a single living soul, only the bitter smell of ash and signs of silence across the broken ground. A sudden, sharp attack swept over the whole body, cold flooding awareness as everything happened abruptly, desperate and exposed. The air suddenly trembled, icy dread filled the room, and everyone felt like a character in a horror movie. A towering 8th grader who probably already has his first O walks by, and his shadow trembles on the classroom walls. Delta strikes the neck hard, the air whistles, and a burning pain shoots through the body. One blow from the monster wiped the enemies from the face of the earth. The knights froze in terror, and the commander ordered them not to break ranks, because otherwise no one would hold the wall for the people. It was hard to imagine how they could get out of that maze of fear and helplessness. A girl stepped out from the trees with a binding arrow, looked straight at her companion, and called him over, while a sharp sense of anxiety filled the air. The monster hit the ground, raising a cloud of dust and rumbling low in the silence. A pleasant surprise flashed in their eyes, because only 2 people had defeated this enemy. True daredevils and seekers of adventure. Her fingers touched the wound like a soft breath of spring, and the pain vanished instantly, leaving the enemy frozen in surprise, not expecting such a thing from her. In a tight circle stood Biles with the faint glow of a magic bow, Keto quietly drawing a shining sword in the air, and Noel, pure as dawn, all of them from the same class. Knights watched as the 10th grade adventurers sprang into action, and everyone's hearts tightened with gratitude because without those boys, everything would have stopped. He spread the plans, smelled fresh paper and metal, and with steady hands began assembling, deciding to do it all himself using his experience and skills. Team Ventures stands firm, their hearts already burning, and their eyes showing resolve for a real battle. Usually the nobles keep their distance, but here a whole pack has gathered, the heavy air presses in, and the knights feel the end like a storm's breath on their backs. One powerful strike sent the enemies into a swirl of dust, leaving everyone stunned, as she was just a normal 11th grader named Juro Labar. Draft suddenly appears before everyone, breathing hard. The king's wizard, powerful as a storm, his eyes flashing like lightning in the night silence. His Highness ordered that no monster be given any chance, because a threat in the dark corners of the world had stirred outrage and fear. Barely catching a strange echo of magic in the air, she ran into the night, following tracks that scattered cold sparks at her feet. A group of lords stood by the wall, looking around in confusion while an uneasy buzz filled the air. Yellow flags trembled in the air. Soldiers surged forward, and knights were scattered across the frozen field like toys. A whisper said, "Leave those two monsters behind," and the cold wind seemed to push toward the decisive step. Once they realized these were not legends but ordinary monsters, fear began to melt. For Ryder's arrival revived hope and faith, and beside him in battle, the names Jor-El, the Witch of Doom, and the demigod of the sword, thundered. Now the mission is to defeat Lemaine, a fearsome warrior who, with his dragon, destroyed 18 towns and villages, leaving only ash and the wind's cry. This man carries more than 70,000 lost lives, with the names Ryder and Yuri echoing forever in the mournful wind. Only 2 11th graders were chosen for the mission, and their task was to destroy others like them. These creatures have unfathomable powers unknown to the world, and with a single breath, they can burn whole cities, while history still remembers that several countries vanished from the map after their arrival. 200 years ago, the dragons left only ash, and now memories of those times fade like dust in the wind. No country has yet found a way to stop the dragons. Fear hangs in the air. Angry roars sweep over the cities, and no one has found protection. More than 2 centuries ago, a sage hiding behind exercises secretly hunted dragons, proving with every move that these creatures can be defeated if you believe in yourself. The dragon rises into the sky, breathes a blast of heat that can burn everything nearby to ash, and its wings whip up a whirlwind that can wipe a city from the face of the earth. That longing burns in the heart and won't let you rest, a true living dream already reaching up like a young shoot toward the sun. On the right, enemies swarm so thick it feels like their numbers grow every second, and their shadows multiply in an uneasy haze of adventure. At last, Ryder felt that their time had come. The air smelled of storm. Anxiety rocked their heart, and something inevitable was already knocking at the door. "Only you should go on, the others must return to the room," he said softly, and in the hush the words were barely heard. "No need to worry about them. Once you feel the burden, you can easily drop everything and leave it behind because they have been ready for this for a long time." Everyone sensed it at once. The air smelled of magic, as if someone had quietly spilled it at their feet. Uriel's steps closed in on each of them, and he had already squeezed the space into an invisible wall that was cold and sharp like a blade. A beam of light flashed simply and swiftly, cutting through the darkness in an instant, as if someone had tossed a bright spark into the night. This move rarely kills small creatures, targeting the eye with a precise strike to the very heart of danger. With the first shot, Mono had to destroy the enemy, but a heart filled with such power could not easily accept the task. Fortunately, her invisible shield saved her. Tension hung in the air, and Jurel whispered with curiosity, "Who are you really?" A shadow of a smile crossed his lips. "And I was the one assigned to destroy you, because the dragon of terror still breathes in the dark. The dragon's breath, its strongest weapon, stays forever out of reach for an ordinary human body. Even under its power, a person is still weaker, though Limey and Sawditch knew much more about it than others." Faced with new circumstances, Jurel fell silent, then nodded, a spark crossing his eyes as he decided to reveal something important. They called the technology Comment Fall. It was a tangle of snakes that ate time and energy, but if the plan worked, no living creature could resist, and it held the single chance tightly in its palm. Saving her breath only for true enemies made it easier to stay balanced in human form, but she sensed they did not see her as an ordinary pest, and even the enemy confirmed this, unaware of her curse since there was still time. A beam of light slid after the question and fell on what she hid behind her back, and the air stirred, cut by keen curiosity. The timely rescue from the imp was almost felt in the trembling air, and he noted it carefully as gratitude fluttered in the surrounding silence. A confession rolled through his voice. The act, like slightly undercooked dough, still needed more care. Quiet gratitude filled the 11th grader's heart, and she, feeling a warm surge of strength, could not remember his steps ever echoing in these walls. Magic flared in his hands with a bright glow, but it faded quickly, like a spark that breaks free from the darkness for only a moment. The time had come, and he had to act. So the boy pulled out a strange device that gleamed in his hands. The witch stared and asked what it was, and the girl recognized something familiar in its faintly vibrating outline. The amulet is clenched in his hand. Reiter freezes the moment, quieting the chaos and buying precious time, and Uriel must seize this chance immediately. Tension filled the air as the moment turned into close combat, and the cold blade of his sword gleamed in his hand. The opponent shrugged. The human's strength was respectable, but next to the draft it was only a candle against a storm. A cold, shimmering wall blocked the path, a familiar mystical barrier. There was not a shadow of doubt. He felt no fear and would not retreat. The enemy noted that the object was moving away calmly without leaving a scratch, and the man quietly said it had opened, which changed the battle's tone and made it strangely different. The boy hoped that once she finished her ritual, it was a shame their conversation never took off, since it could have been fun and even a little funny. Success filled their chests as if death itself feared to come and cast a cold shadow, its power gone here. On the curse, only 3 people this century can stop the comet's fall, while raiders press on like an unstoppable dark wave. Strength surged back into the body like lightning, but something was missing. A hollow remained deep inside. If they truly believed the curse would take his life, the air seemed to hold its breath in anxious expectation. Surprise flashed in Uriel's eyes. Even his fierce blows failed to stop it, and she gasped, unsure how to halt such an invulnerable monster. His chest tightened with excitement as a legendary battle lay ahead, and a worthy opponent stood before him. So light flashed in his eyes, and his blinding move did its work. Muscles tensed, heart pounding, Lime felt his power match drag like wind meeting a storm before the final strike. Sharp anxiety pierced her heart. It was time to act at once. She steeled herself, played her last card, and felt her mana fade, leaving a bitter taste of fear. The star spell is stronger than the earlier ones. It drains so much mana that the caster feels a burning heat in their veins. Every movement becomes dangerous, and the air grows tense with fear. At last, the moment arrived to teach Reiter to control his powerful mana, because excess power for a mage is like a wildfire in the hands. The enemy's blade cuts the body in 2, blood pulsing at the feet. But Gerald's spell already fills the air, and his death becomes the first breath of a new era. A falling star flares in the hand and flies straight into the target, a direct strike from a merciless force, causing the enemy to vanish, and even their memory to scatter like smoke in the night sky. The air shield hummed under his hands, drove off the enemy attack, and the wind stood still in surprise along with everyone. Sagan listened in surprise, wondering how she knew the name and imagining the taste and aroma of the dish he would try this time. It seemed impossible that he had managed to break the spell, or it was only a cruel game in someone's mind, and she had no hope left as a heavy, clinging darkness settled on her shoulders. A dome of air closed in around her, swallowing space and taking away her freedom to move or speak, and even a question got stuck on her lips in the silence. The enemy's breath brushed her face. A cold shock pierced her heart, and her last moment had come. The realization hit sharply. She had been left alive on purpose. Gerald asked quietly if he wanted her to feel it for herself. This power hides a challenge to ancient magic, an invisible barrier like lemming that only grazes the edge of his awareness as the girl prepares to run from everything to avoid becoming a woman. He did not want her to realize he liked it, so he did not give himself away with any look or gesture, not even for a moment. No choice remained. Allowing it would be like betraying oneself, feeling an icy emptiness where the heart should burn. The barrier shattered before their eyes and the air trembled. Lamy briefly thought of Juraile, but knew she could not destroy the shield. 2 guests, Chaos and Iris, were playing their game when Gerald suddenly felt the woman beside him did not breathe with human warmth, and a foreign world flickered in her eyes. The enemy asked who you were, and the words hung in the air like a cold wind in the dark. A faint trace of anxiety faded in the air, and Iris asked softly, unsure if he wanted to avoid a clash or if his plan was deeper. Smiling, she nodded and urged us on, limping, leaving a soft trail in the dust and the quiet rustle of grass underfoot. The step was delayed, But there was no immortality here, and the enemy, breathing hard, wondered where these people with mortal lives came from. Footsteps sounded on the doorstep, already late, and blood, smoke, and the stirred air showed the monster expert had been called in vain because meeting the dragon promised only fear and disgust. The companion wasn't sure if he was getting ready for a duel, and Deus felt indifferent toward the weak opponent, but couldn't just let him lie there. "Let go of Uriel," a voice said in the silence, and Ryder's words about the true nature of the damp, eerie monster rose again in the girl's mind. A harsh shout froze the man, and the enemy quickly wrapped him in a tight grip, the moves sharp and a chill running down his spine from the tension. Realizing the trace of forbidden magic, Lemon saw that the man understood too, and the man asked warily what to do next. Her heart pounded, and someone had recognized her magic and broken the barrier like thunder, and now only one thought ran through her head about who he was, this mysterious stranger. He said sadly that Lemon is not a creature of the dark depths of space. His powers are small, and although the spell looks like chaos, it is worth trying to understand its broken structure. Suddenly, thoughts sparked one after another. The spells unraveled instantly, easier than anyone could imagine. The air smelled of ozone, and a fierce thrill rose in the chest. The enemy waited, hoping the huge barrier would hang over and crush the boy, but splinters rustled in the wind, uneasy, as if something was about to change. The realization came. The enemy will not believe a word until he feels the tremor run through his body and fear tightens his chest. His palms tighten, and the object, hard as a rock, cracks under the pressure and shatters before his eyes, the impossible giving way to his strength. The steady staff now lies just beneath him, cool and solid like a root in the night hush. Surprise flashed in the enemy's eyes, but the fragile barrier was already trembling under each step, like ice over rushing water about to crack. Strangely, the strongest barrier collapsed under his pressure, and the surprise left a chill, with no comfort, only anxiety and a faint tremor in the air. The thought struck me that a weakling could not have forbidden power, and I immediately realized the enemy was hiding a real dark force like a shadow in the evening rain. Each word made the room more amazed, and Gaius's gaze forced action, and the boy began to change before their eyes. 10 seconds hang in the air, only a moment to cast the spell, and if he hesitates, he will have to cling to life by instantly raising a new shield. Out of the silence, Iris is already preparing to explain the opening strikes, and every move, every step, must be etched into memory like the smell of metal and the excited breath before battle. Long hours drag on, and even the simplest spell is hard to make because it takes too much energy and time. When I saw the first level marker, I realized that instead of a quick meteor shower flash, everything had slowed 5-fold, stretching every fraction of a second into a minute, and wasting time. Surprise flashed in Iris's eyes as the young man said casually it was only 10 seconds and insisted he had nothing to do with it. My breath caught, and I wanted the enemy to rush forward with all their fury and the fire in their chest. Real felt the seconds stretch into eternity, each spell forming so slowly that the air around him tightened and thickened with tension. He finally confessed and revealed his first-level abilities, as if a heavy stone fell from his soul and relief danced in his chest. Her gaze was disapproving like a dark cloud. The witch felt a beam of light snap like lightning and slice the boy in two. He had almost no chance, and Geza's sword fell with a dull thud to the ground. Even at the edge of his strength, he caught a stranger's sword, and the girl sensed that the figure before her was no ordinary man but something more, like the breath before a storm. The opponent is stunned by the look and did not expect such lightning-fast movements from a person. Gaz says calmly that these are not just reflexes. His gaze slid to Iris, holding his breath. He softly asked if she knew why it had been so easy for him to dodge, and confusion tightened his heart. Guy sensed the tiniest shifts in the enemy's magic like a seasoned hunter feeling prey. So he easily predicted the next spells, though he still did not understand why Lyman acted so openly, and Uriel caught his breath in surprise because not everyone can read that invisible current and dodge in time when seconds stretch like hot air before a storm. Battle experience pulsed in his veins, and he decided to show his true power, while Gerald could only feel magic burst before him, deft and swift like a night wind. The blade touched the air, the space cracked like glass, and the enemy's sword only slid helplessly along the rift. unable to stop movement or even a breath. The sword flashed in his hand as if thunder had halted the enemy's blade, and for a moment the air went still. Then what followed shocked everyone. Rodiganist's sword flashed through the air, slicing space with sudden, utterly incredible speed. But Lemaine could not believe his eyes because this should not be possible. He discovers that bringing the sword once to a fresh spark makes the spell bounce off like snow from a roof. And the odd thing is that spatial cutting is basically a simple miracle. 4 long seconds passed, and he quietly asked what else he had left in his arsenal. Clenching his fists and pressing his lips, he decided it was time to act decisively, without half measures or fear, and only radical steps could change everything at the root. A new power stirred inside him. Flames wrapped his body. His skin turned into scales. His arms became wings. And Deus froze, stunned as he watched this first real moment of change. His body holds both dragon and human blood, magic pulsing and shining as it mixes, flaring with the power of the elements and the heat of dragon wings. The enemy spoke boldly in a hoarse voice, glancing as the feeling ran through his whole body. Near death and exhausted, Gaius let out his last breath as a blinding magical wave that bent the air and scorched everything around. He was sure no barrier could hold against the powerful spell, but his certainty was wrong when the magic suddenly bounced off an invisible wall like glass hitting ice. The people seemed to him like a helpless crowd, a pitiful mass that gave in to them easily, and that thought pulsed in his head. Rock-solid stance, 3 seconds passed, only 2 remained, and the tension grew with every breath. My heart leapt to my throat. The enemy's strongest attack has arrived, and maybe his full, terrible power will be unleashed now. Juro watched in disbelief as his opponent attacked with rings of summoning, expecting a protective shield, but facing a swift, magical counter, his own protective symbol barely glowing while the girl simply admired the skill. An incomplete spell is like crystal to him. Touch his heart and everything falls apart in an instant. Only someone true can feel it. The spell rolled forward slowly, and as magic crackled, he felt his weaknesses unfold in his mind, layer by layer. Iris's soft voice broke the silence, saying she caught every word and listened closely without missing a single sound. Lyman, heart pounding, grips his sword as a final breath burns his chest, a new move already waiting for him, while Deus clenches his fist and a meteor forms in the air. "Hurry," he urged. In a moment, Lyman will disappear from sight along with the last chance that trembled in the air like an ember. The enemy was certain the meteorite would shatter on the volcano's protective barrier, leaving no cracks. Barrier spells had always been his secret weapon. They saved him from the raging power of a falling star, and no meteorite could pierce that defense. Yet even that did not give him a chance to defeat the Drake. Doubt hides in the voice, making it unclear whether he will be all right, while the others are only shadows around, unsure how to act next. Entranced by his easy victory over the dragon of fear, Lemon the girl kept wondering who this mysterious victor was. Geist detected no aura of forbidden magic, and his chest tightened, though he knew it could not be otherwise. To the enemy's left, the dragon soul stone showed dimly, damaged as if touched by black magic. Its surface cracked, and a cold gleam ran down it like a shadow. The dragon's body dissolved, leaving only a stone that smolders with the heat of riddles, and it alone can open the path into the depths of forbidden mathematics that disturbs the silence of future discoveries. His hands blazed with power, and he knew his strength swept away all doubts, though until now it had been only a legend. Yet the girl, without looking away, still dared to address her rival. The mystery of the spell that pulls meteor fire from the sky called to her urgently, like a touch of wind, and a fierce curiosity burned in her heart about how that power worked. "This is exactly what I was looking for," she said with a smile. Uriel assured that not even a falling star could get past these barriers because the protection here was so solid. A different person stood before her now. Something untamed and new flashed in his eyes like a storm sweeping away her old view of him. Only now he realized those emotions had been boiling inside him then, and she had slyly used the cries and gunfire to her advantage. Heart pounding, she was about to reach her goal as the other student had, and waves of powerful second-level magic rolled over her shoulders, yet doubt remained that it was fair to give everything without expecting anything in return. Curiosity stirred in the boy's chest. The scent of the unknown pulled at him, and his thoughts began to drift more often toward forbidden topics. Guy has probably already noticed the change in her voice and watches every twitch of her face, while she still guesses whether he will experiment on her or simply turn her into a toy. Her attention is razor sharp. The slightest step in the dark can become a fatal whisper for her. When asked about the meteorite in her chest, invisible strings inside her trembled, curiosity mixed with shame, and her cheeks suddenly flushed with a warm wave. Thinking her look showed interest, he quietly asked what she thought, but Iris froze, her heart pounding, her thoughts tangled, and her words hung in the air. Curiosity lit their eyes. There was no turning back, only the chaos of choices behind them, and escape felt pointless and impossible. Mysterious magnetism draws you closer, its gaze inviting you to touch untold stories and learn more than silence allows. His tone wasn't angry, he just saw her as basic, level 1, and not suited to any devious plan. The boy simply said everyone knew it. So her words were to him like a meaningless breeze, rustling indifferently and fading away. A thought suddenly lodged in his mind. Despite the storm of events, so much strength remained in him, mysterious and almost unbelievable. Her gaze drew him to the hard-won strength forged in sleepless training, and the talents he was proud of without fully understanding why. Tears on her cheeks and a trembling voice, she promised to learn and was ready to do anything, and that courage unsettled others. So the young man immediately asked where such determination came from at the start. Victory used to be enough for her. Now a hotter, stronger craving drives her, and she wants to feel someone else's breath fade beneath her hands. Surprise hung in the air. Their aims oddly echoed each other, and a note of impatience in his voice showed that something else, unspoken and important, was taking shape in his thoughts. Forbidden magic lurked in this person, quietly pulsing under the skin and waiting for a chance to break free. Deuce saw the spark of magic in her from the start. The power trembled like smoke and gave off distortions, but the jury believed she had cleverly hidden her secret. A glance made him wonder whether Iris knew about that small detail. She just shrugged, not getting it, and he realized she genuinely hadn't noticed what was obvious to him. The training had one condition: gain the knowledge he had hidden, even if it cost him a hand or both, and Ural did not hesitate because it would reveal all the secrets and dangers of supreme magic. The book settled into the outstretched hand, and the soft crackle of pages and the faint smell of paper were what you were looking for, even if the journey was long. A smile lit his lips when he remembered that the book's author was Euro Leventroff, who had written all the secrets of forbidden magic, and he admitted he dreamed of one day diving into her lines. Another requirement surfaced in her mind. She had to become equally strong to compete with dignity, keep up, and withstand any test. An idea to start his own group lit up in his eyes, so he looked for like-minded people, because learning to move and breathe together would be easier and warmer. This mark hits the heart of her dream to become stronger, and it also carries a special talent that lets her move toward her goal faster than others did with the first mark. Altogether, without saying a word, we decided to walk beside him as one wave, confidently and quietly. Forbidden magic burned under her skin. She could feel the experiments were about to begin. The boy smiled as if it were a good plan, and Iris welcomed new friends with relief while her stomach rumbled with hunger. The whole kingdom bows to her power, the witch of destruction, and even Lyman fell to her magic. Blinded by his title, she killed him as if it were a child's game. Ural wanted her at his side. In his dreams, she was his companion, while the man's true power remained unknown and terrified him with its boundlessness. Something elusive, like a spark in the air, touched her at once, making her listen harder and quicken her heart. Eyes followed the girl. A strange magic radiated from her, and her mentor stood nearby, clearly showing her something wondrous and not human. Noticing the hunger in her eyes, the girl offered a handful of crunchy cookies, their warm scent inviting, and the gesture was deeply moving. A burst of spice hit his mouth, and Jural leaned closer and asked in disbelief if that dish could really no longer be found here. A dark dragon lives inside her as she answers. Shadow wings unfurl across her back, and night resonates in her voice. Legends whisper about her strength and courage, and the sky rumbled at her name as everyone admired her. He barely dared to ask for permission. His words tangled in the air, and she was already imagining how Gerald would decode this kaleidoscope of meanings for her. A monster's cry cut through the night, and the heart trembled, expecting a looming shadow, but instead of a fearsome creature, it turned out to be a disappointment. The dragon alone remained, but victory was already in the air, and he had taken something valuable with him. A man on the road, grinning from ear to ear, joined them gladly, while the girls exchanged glances and the air smelled of curiosity, as if the world had opened a little for them. The second mark burned on her skin for long-range spells, and forbidden magic he had dreamed of smoldered in her hands, but the power did not yet fully obey her. That day the road hummed with noise and dust, and suddenly 2 odd companions appeared before him, the kind you might meet anywhere. Bitter memories stayed. At first everything shone. Then their first assignment came and they were left alone with anxiety clinging to their skin like a shadow. Every word unsettles. Act immediately. Leave a mark on their heart. Keep them from leaving, and notice even the smallest touch or glance. A soft woman's name flowed like a gentle melody. You barely heard it, and your heart quietly smiled. Jarila watched Iris warily as she changed. Something about her frightened him, and in the glow of magic he felt there was nothing human in the girl, so he could not expect her to act sensibly. Iris realizes she must learn to see through people's masks, while Gerald, deep in thought, considers possible attackers and strains to hear every whisper around him. Her odd reaction did not go unnoticed, because she could not imagine him failing the task, since Guy grew up among people and easily understands others. The morning fog's smell squeezed his chest when she asked for his name, and while Ural searched his mind for an answer, he suddenly realized he had never told the world his name. Suddenly he understood that the city's hopes rested on his shoulders, and that he was the one everyone quietly believed to be their hero. A myth burned by time, a battle mage with eyes of icy fire that could embody gods, vanished a century ago, leaving a trail of ash from defeated monsters and saved kingdoms. The golden power that could wipe out all dragons came back to her, and Iris felt a cold fear that she might be turned to ash too. She had never aimed for that and breathed out calmly. Over centuries he had heard thousands of stories about dragons' deaths and had himself slain such creatures more than once, leaving only ash and embers behind. Opening up to his friends, he finally admitted he had spent 100 years killing 100 dragons, the words hanging in the air like a thunderclap, and Urala felt a chill run across her skin for the first time. He said it happened because he wiped them from the face of the earth in a single day, and a thick, silent shock hung in the air with confusion frozen on people's faces. The voice stayed calm, saying he did not want anyone to die and asking for trust, but the scent of fear would not fade. Iris remembers the ritual of 108 dragon souls and fears she may be the last. Then she whispers, "Why did you kill them?" Their hostility showed in their stares, teeth clicking, and everything he did was just an attempt to protect himself. Completely subdued, he obeyed every word. Geisy kept wondering what had happened to her voice, and Gerald could not believe killing 100 dragons in a day was possible, since most had died in other ways. You won't wake the wind with those words, but Lai Min was weak, and if he had thrown that reproach at her, indignation would have flared in her eyes, so every sound had to be weighed because this dragon had become his worst fight, and Uriel only sighed skeptically, not calling it a victory for the experienced. In the anxious silence, he asked if everything was okay, not noticing the doubt filling the girl, and she whispered that she could not even call herself average. Though known as invincible, fate brought them down. Just yesterday, she believed such warriors never lost, but the battle proved otherwise. A realization hit him. These warriors were not just better. No one in the kingdom matched them, and he had spent 10 years chasing them, thinking he had caught up, until something impossible happened. From somewhere in the air, a voice asked if she had ever heard of the book he had written, the one called Introduction to Magical Combat, and the title, as it turned out, awakened in her memory the scent of adventure. Finally, this book contains chapters on the art of combat, practical lessons in magic, and the shimmering foundations of magical battle theory. 100 years ago, confidence in the power of this knowledge pulsed through everyone, for they believed touching those secret pages would make abilities grow like fire in the evening silence. The variety of books on the shelves made it seem like just a little more, and you could reach Gerald's level and feel his experience. She insisted these books had the wrong title, and Hayes looked at her and asked why she was so sure, saying he might have made an error while copying, A faint scent of magic rose from the pages, so the book's words hid from people like dusk hides from the sun. Every word of these texts, she admits, is a maze for beginners, and she has only managed to understand fragments, while the scientists at the Institute of Magic work day after day to decode their ancient language. The continent's words seemed tamed, but the meaning slipped away like smoke, leaving a heavy, impenetrable wall of misunderstanding. Some details were left between the lines, because if Hayes had told everything in full, it would have been at least 100 volumes, so he stuck to the main points and moved on. Enough talk about books. The smell of coffee blends with the tension in the air, and now attention turns to the people nearby, to each person whose presence moves the team forward. The first sign stayed with the first. The second went to Eurilo, and Iris, a true dragon with a mighty body and a breath of fire, shatters every limit of what is possible. He asked which mark she meant, and Iris, a bit embarrassed, hesitated before answering, swallowing her words like warm air before a summer storm. Only the fourth option matched the plan perfectly, and everything fell into place as if the puzzle had finally found its place. A smell of iron came from behind, where a swordsman stood with the black fourth mark, and the man was sure Gerald had recognized him too. Her voice softly called his name, carrying a little awkward doubt, and he asked confidently if he was in her group, feeling in his heart that he was. Reel squinted and asked if the other man was sure he meant Ryder, and the boy replied quietly that the letter might still have reached him. Magic feels like fog to him. Names slip from his memory like wind strips leaves, and he dreams of weaving his own memory to keep what matters close as everything around him melts away. Some accounts say Ryder rushed into battle with Limaine, was cut in two and killed, unless that was only the prologue to his incredible return. Gaia quietly said she could not bring him back to life. The boy asked whether she was sure he was really gone, and the girl just sighed as if it had to happen. A glance slid over the body, finding no trace, no mark that the skin had been torn in two, and not a single vein even twitched. Her eyes snapped open, and she realized it was him. A wave of panic and relief hit her because he finally broke the silence. She warned them not to treat him so lightly, and Juril, bitterly surprised, found himself wondering how he was still alive. The girls smiled and said that over time it simply split him in two like an axe splitting an old rotten trunk. Sometimes things like that bring death, but to Ryder those words were empty words, and he felt no fear, only a cold calm in his heart. People with burning hearts trace magic circles, and their thoughts control them, but Juril has never heard of that. Even without the lower body, both systems continue to work, but without proper preparation, the body steadily weakens and soon gives in to pain and loss. Even when a body is cut in half, it is not the end, because regeneration restores life and heals the deepest wounds. So the jury ruled this miracle defies the laws of nature. Leaning back in the shade, she threw out a sharp, "Stupid," and the guy behind her breathed a sigh of relief because finally someone understood him completely, though the girl kept getting strange, watchful looks. The swordsman wondered if he would join their team, and calm filled Gaia's chest as her squad finally became whole like a harmonious melody. Anxiety shows on Juril's face, with no hint of pleasure, and she is probably annoyed by his action, but it is worth finding out whether she senses how much care he shows his friends. Breezily, he asked where the others from their team had gone, and Jurail immediately realized he meant the same 10th century adventurers. Along the way, the weaker ones wanted to turn back, but the dragon burned them without mercy, and they were too frail to save, vanishing in smoke and flame. Juril said they were buried right here. The meteorite touched the ground with an almost invisible breath, but the echo of its strike still lives in the air, in the stone, in the heart of this land. Glimmers of magic in the air make it clear the creatures are still nearby and breathing. Some dragons, barely holding back laughter, take pleasure in watching the human's weakness, while others seem not to notice the human's suffering. In the end, everyone lost something important, and even his shadow seemed to merge with the darkness of defeat. It was still possible to save everything. Clenching his teeth, he rushed forward, feet sliding on wet grass, cold sweat running down his back, and he used a healing spell thrummed in the air, but he couldn't understand why they whispered it to the dew and the ground at his feet. A strange ache pressed in her chest, because she did not catch the meaning of his words. which slipped away like a light wind scattering her hopes. Most of all, it was Jim, because the thought of his confused expression made her heart tighten. The reason for the burial became clear to him, and the mystery of the drought settled at the bottom of his thoughts like dry dust under bare feet. A terrible act suddenly became an echo, and the boy just shrugged that it was nothing, as laughter filled the air and everything seemed to return to normal. Beneath a night sky sharp with anticipation, they met for the first time and decided it was time to form their own band. He said confidently that he had made these sturdy pieces of furniture in no time. People were not sure the first mark really belonged to him. A sad nod gave the simple answer. A sharp order came to move at once and carry the joyful news of the dragon's death, while hot air still trembled and the dull echo of victory lingered. Beneath a cloud of smoke and the scent of coffee, people gathered to celebrate the founding of their association. None of his groups lasted half a day, and the fastest broke up after 2 hours, the same amount of time since the season began. From his first steps, he has stubbornly avoided setting a new record, as if the thought alone brings cold sweat to his brow. One clear goal can bind them together like a thread, and you must find that point and keep walking toward it without straying so you do not fall to pieces. He dreamed of giving them a handbag, light as a summer breeze, so their eyes would shine with surprise. Ryder dreams of becoming stronger, and Jurael seeks strength too, both searching for ways to grow and never stopping until their blood boils with the hunger to be better. Her words came out plain, a warm voice confessing that she also longed to feel the true power flowing through her fingers like wind through the summer. Hearing those words from her was new to him, but the girl insisted she had said them before, and if her intent was different, she should say it without shame. So Iris decided to keep it all to herself. Tension filled the air, a soft whisper. A question hovered about how Diask and the others planned to start, as if someone was about to break the silence of the first act. The drive to compete burned in Gerald, and he searched for a weak spot in her defense, but each time her strikes beat his resolve and left the taste of defeat on his lips. Inspiration is gone. Only other people's phrases echo in my head, and my heart feels empty because the words on the page are not her voice. 3 currents pulse within this power: strength like a storm, skill like flowing water, and mastery like a craftsman's gentle touch. The first 2 points are easy. The needed skills come quickly and the topics are simple, but the real challenge is the craft, which is hard to master. Sensing that enemies want to destroy young dragons like this one, he arranges an exchange himself, clenching his fists and swallowing bitter anger. At first, Gerald would not have guessed that this dragon was so small, and Gaius, who took charge of their training, surprised him by being sure that in time they would know what they needed. "First, we'll gather everything we need," she said, "and only then I will create," while Guy already smoothed his first mark in his mind, seeing it as the perfect base for a new masterpiece. The hunger for power drives people forward, but human frailty and the limits of magic press in like a shadow that never lets go, not even for a moment. Determined to become a real force, she vowed to train until her last breath. And most of all, Gaius saw a hidden strength in everyone, as if he sensed a warmth that had not yet become a flame. Guy says, "A person spends their life shedding labels, is often judged only by strength and seen as weak, but something unbreakable shines in their gaze. No force could stop them in their relentless drive to find a way beyond ordinary humanity, and even the air around them burned with longing." Not everyone understood what Guy said. His voice carried powers beyond human limits, and Jurel already felt it was about something unspeakably dangerous. The spirits of burning stars swirl in the cosmic silence, weightless as smoke, and hold the same power that forbidden magic kindles. Each object has its own properties, and those properties let Element 2 be alive and respond when you ask it to. Kill a dragon and you don't get any fire breath. Kill the dog and nothing special appears, only empty air and a faint smell of ash. Here, everything is different from the spirits of burning stars. The winner absorbs the defeated one's full power and gets stronger, so they keep challenging fate to test the limits of their power. The moment he got even a scrap of one fragment, power was already boiling under his skin, but Ryder deep down did not believe it. He suggested checking his guesses and asking Jim to confirm or deny them. The organization planted a mysterious power in her palms, a magic that pulses deep inside, but she still does not hear it trying to breathe through her fingers. When asked if she could kill a dragon today, Yuri Elfoot nodded with a sparkle in her eyes and said she would have the courage to do it even now. It seemed unlikely that a piece of her soul had appeared here by chance, so the proto-Gwynist quietly asked if she could say where the gift came from. Carol sank into the darkness of the unknown, for mortals are not told about forbidden magic, and those secrets are kept by a small circle of the chosen beyond her reach. Forced to act alone, Guy took everything into his own hands. Ryder promised he would ask for help sincerely, and Iris asked about magic with a trembling voice, but his broad shoulders only left her confused. Through a fog of memories, a moment from the ceremony came back. Yurao clearly smelled the wooden floor, heard muffled voices in the headquarters, and saw the flicker of distant lights. When he asked her to go there, she shook her head. It was more complicated than it seemed. Once she had tried that path and found only a deep crater, as if a whole sea had fallen in. It struck him that someone had been carefully erasing their tracks. He turned to Juril, kept his eyes on her, and asked if her enemy was connected to this organization. The truth came out, and everyone here saw him as an elusive agent, with every move showing an authority beyond doubt. First, the hero focuses fully on tracking down traces of the organization. Then, driven by a hunger for secret magic, dives into battles while constantly training strength and agility. It looked like a cleverly woven plan, and Gerald said nothing, only glancing into the shadows. Their path leads to the mayor's kingdom, where they will bring news of Lyman's death, and the organization will immediately send an invitation. And Gase always admired the mayor's grandeur, but Ryder was unsure whether anything had changed. He lunged for the teleportation spell. Surprised faces froze around him, space wavered, and his team was already racing far ahead, leaving even allies behind. A majestic wall rose before him, the pride of the people, radiating hope and calm, and Ryder had heard that these walls had more than once saved the kingdom from disaster. A voice rang out that the impenetrable barrier had once been made by the powerful wizard Geiss, and the swordsman realized this was exactly what they meant. As a pang of anticipation tightened his chest, he walked past the guards without looking at them and quietly asked if anything unusual had happened here. Jura only shrugged. It is always calm here. The enemy won't break the barrier, so they don't keep extra guards. Wait a moment before the royal gaze, and let the smell of fresh bread and Iris's soft laugh draw you into the cozy dining room. A gentle, rhythmic request is drifting to you like a spring breeze. With the soft rustle of his cloak, he accompanied Lady Gerald and Sir Ryder as they stepped onto the soft grass of the evening garden. The order came to notify the king immediately, and the guard, with fear in his eyes, promised it would be done. Pastor Gaia and Iris walk side by side. The wind lifts the hems of their clothes, and a shared hope shines in their eyes. The mystery of who they were remains unsolved. The door opens only when a clinking coin rattles somewhere in the pocket. Still smelling of dust on their boots, they said firmly that they had taken part in the clearing of Liman and had even assisted, and they asked to go with the group, but the guardsman quietly replied that the bishop alone decides. A battle mage with an open smile admits he is gay and gives a faint sidelong glance, as if people might be surprised to hear it. A gaze cut like a blade and said flatly that it was hard now, as if the world were crushing the chest. Ryder could have gone on, but they were stopped and asked to escort him, so they decided to ask the king for permission in the end, hoping for a favorable reply. Thoughts raced through his mind about what moves Gaines would make next. With a warm smile, the king greeted Gerald and Ryder, shook their hands firmly, and thanked them for defeating Lemon, a deed like a golden crest that won them glory and confirmed the king's deep faith in their power. They confessed that they did not kill Limain, but their words vanished into the corners of the throne room, and the king never understood the true meaning of their confessions. Real insisted on a meeting, but Roy just sighed and reminded them they'd already talked, a faint note of irony in his voice. A portal suddenly tore open nearby. The air trembled, a faint scent of ozone rose, and a soft rumble cut the silence as if the world had split in two. A sudden thunderclap rolled through the hall, forcing even confident Ryder to hold his breath. Doubt crossed his face, but Gaia's insistent voice would not let him go. She nudged him gently and, breathing in the night air, he stepped confidently into the darkness. The man's cold command sent the guards rushing into the room. The door creaked, and the air filled with alarm. The guards rushed forward but hit an invisible magical wall, their efforts useless, their expressions blank, and in the tense silence, Hayes calmly asks to be heard in full. A sharp voice shook the hall, saying that listening to an outsider was pointless. The Lord asked slyly how this guest had passed through the walls. Deus replied calmly that it was teleportation magic. The king, surprised, recalled the famed master's barrier. The barrier stands like an ice wall. No magic can breach it, and not even a shadow can teleport through. Asked if this legendary name might have a hidden gay note, smirking and pressing the air between words. When asked, he looked away and said quietly that only the royal family had the right to know this, and an uneasy silence fell. Rodiganist just shrugged and quietly said he knew nothing because no one had told him anything. A cold shock hit the ruler. Without hesitation, he ordered the guards to spread out across the hall. Steel flashed and footsteps echoed off the walls. A portrait print glowed above him. An old king and a hero, two faces similar yet different. Only the gray hair showed age, but a true warrior does not grow old. His mind still won't accept it's real, and his hands tremble when he reaches for the old contract kept from the time when it still held power. A document with a golden seal lay in the king's hands, and the bearer felt confident that the mark was a sign of royal blood. It was time to release the guards, even if they resisted, because the situation required it. And the king apologized sincerely, saying he did not wish Lord Guy any harm and urging him to accept any help he could get. Warm gratitude touched his voice along with an apology for his bluntness, but his first request to register in the kingdom under someone else's name sounded firm and cut through the silence. The ruler was stunned because the mage already knew that if he stepped in, everyone would see the ruler as a hero, and everything around would suddenly become quicker, lighter, almost transparent to outsiders. Better to keep my name, he thought, since it would get lost among the others and even the legendary mage would now be laughed at with no one believing a word. Noise from the boys filled the air and made him uneasy. Doubt gnawed at him with every new voice, and deep inside he became convinced this was a bad idea. In the Hayes case, he plans to officially register his companion, whose name is I, and the news came like a soft breath of hope. The king froze when he heard she was a dragon, and Hai gently reassured him that as long as the girl remained in human form there was no danger, so the monarch's anxious heart quieted. The king did as he was told, and the boy quietly begged her to act with dignity. The mage leaned closer and quietly asked whether he had heard rumors about a secret organization that gives people forbidden magic. Deep inside, a flash of understanding revealed that it all involved the Brotherhood of the Burning Star. It was unclear if the name truly suited her. The Royal Intelligence Department had given her that name. Ural doubted their taste, and Ryder insisted the group was full of mysteries. The order to collect all information on them has already been issued, and time drags on like a cold drizzle outside the window. Issuing the pass is not easy, so the commander of the Knights must handle it, and even if he wanted to help, he has far more important matters to deal with. The video confidently predicted His Majesty would cope effortlessly, but the man quietly reminded himself of the royal duty that never lets up even in triumph. A nervous flutter hung in the air, and it seemed odd that the king so often sent his men on tasks like this, while the boy insisted it would be easy and his eyes shone with confidence. Ryder's displeasure showed instantly in his eyes, so the lord hurried to apologize, his voice full of sincerity and worry. A quiet voice asked about the event, but it soon became clear there were no real arguments with the commander-in-chief, only a small ripple of misunderstandings that faded away. When asked what he was really like, the girl smiled lightly and said he was always hard-working. The young man guessed he had skill, but Jural shook his head in disagreement. The knight commander reported. His voice cut through the darkness like a worried whisper on a windy night. A few hours passed like a moment after they met. Determination pulsed through him like a restless current that kept him awake. It would be wonderful to smell fresh coffee while reading detailed information about the organization, with team photos, reviews, a soft screen glow, and quiet background music. Everyone had hoped for at least a clue about the Brotherhood of the Burning Star, but the discovery struck like sudden thunder in the silence and gave everyone goosebumps. The commander must respect guests, but he insists on strict obedience to the laws, and above all, he must be told immediately about the destruction of the dragon restraint. Otherwise, he promises nothing. Reel felt the paper pages melting quickly under his hand, and whenever something disturbed his mood, the request vanished at once. while Gacy saw the knight's commander's true temper for the first time. Everyone must follow his rules, and he tolerates no mistakes, demands perfection, and asks only one thing: to be allowed to finish settling the score even though his fame brings difficult consequences. "Let Iris write the story," came the suggestion, and a soft breath of surprise swept through the room, as if someone had dropped a glass. The tests showed that Iris the dragon could not handle the task, but Gaze believed not all was lost, so he decided to write in her place. Embarrassed, the hero realized his strength was far smaller than he had imagined, and his plans to gain magical knowledge forbidden had failed when his body suddenly vanished, dissolving into the air like smoke at dawn. Everything was over, and Juriel already expected a refusal, but the girl said bitterly that far too much remained unknown in their case. He suggested she try on her own, but her fingers did not know the letters, so her lone eye sparkled with a watchful stare, ready to create in her place. Deep inside, she hoped Reuters would outdo itself and produce a text that was transparent and truthful, even if the style faded, because only sincerity and clarity mattered, like fresh air after rain. His words are worth reading, and every line shows a steady, quiet confidence that earns respect. Dry, official lines read like the work of bureaucrats, not journalists. Reuters would not write that, and Ural seemed to have forgotten how to make a short, to-the-point summary. Cold evening silence pressed in. He held the paper tight and walked down the corridor to hand in the report, each step tense, his heart thudding as if more than a meeting waited ahead. A short message hung in the air. It was an order from the commander of the Knight himself. The news of Lamine's death hits Andermenos out of the blue. He had no idea it would end this way, and the report struck like thunder on a clear day. "Anyone who thought the report was successful was mistaken," he said sharply. Then he gave 5 minutes to breathe and consider its faults before their eyes met again. Facing a worrying report, he nodded and promised to change everything. Yet deep down he remained certain he had made no mistakes, and the true meaning of his actions slipped past understanding. Curiosity lit his eyes, and he asked what the other was doing since the brush stayed dry without a drop of ink, and Ryder only whispered that they should simply believe. A con artist insists all changes are ready. Check them. A team of professionals stands behind like a shadow under their commander's watchful eye. That made it better, he agreed. And though those lines were tempered in the heat of battle, they feel restrained, as if the ash has not yet cooled. His gaze softened without meaning to. A dragon stood before him, and Gerald searched inside himself for why his heart trembled and what made him hold back. Ryder didn't change a single word, and Ural seemed focused on finding someone to fix the small errors left on the pages. His example and clear thinking rally the team, so Gerald and Reuter, inspired by that spark, move on to the next episode. The man insisted that only knights could watch over the combat mages, and the fragmented report mentioned plans to form a group with Gerald and Reuter. Guy wanted to know what was causing the unrest. The commander gave a strict order that no permission be granted because it could weaken the army. Guy lowered his eyes and lost confidence in himself, and Maynard was slowly asked what his role in all this was. The question about the meaning of the word rank threw the commentator off balance, surprise flashing in his eyes and his voice faltering for a moment. A quiet despair settled in them. The king was hopeless, and the commander could not see how anyone would take this loud farce seriously. This chance did not happen by accident, and tomorrow Minos must test its power, feeling every movement and every ripple of air from the new move. As soon as Guy realized he only had to show his abilities, he quickly revealed his skill, mysterious and powerful like a battle mage whose strength is hard to measure or compare. Ander felt a pleasant surprise as the young man did not back down at the toughest moment. His sharp mind came through clearly, and that kind of courage deserves real respect. Defeating the examiner would have opened doors, his own group and a new path, but the boy quietly refused, choosing silence over fame. No time to hesitate. The moment to enter the exam arena has arrived. Nervousness fills the air and each second rings with expectation. The footsteps of Hannes, a knight of the 10th rank, had faded, but the astonishment remained, and no one there had imagined seeing so much might. The desire to reach the 11th rank burned in his gaze, and his power was already pouring out stronger than that of those on the 10th rung. In a duel you can still gauge an opponent's strength, but this one is so weak that Guy barely senses him, and a sudden strike from 15 inches would have broken even Gerald. The enemy sends out a power that chills with fear, and Jurail says ordinary people see it as incredible strength, while a battle mage faces a horror that keeps growing. Brodigan kept thinking about a single merciless strike, but something held him back. So he might be hiding his true strength and carefully delaying the moment that will change everything forever. The commander heard fear in the young man's silence, but it was still possible to step forward and join the ranks. The girl must step forward, feel his power on her own skin, and say this out loud, because from now on, she is part of their small pack. The 11th rank did not admit the weak. Only the steady could hold that height, and anyone who proved powerless had to bear the burden of shame alone, which she accepted quietly and confidently without a shadow of doubt. The girl sat tense, her fingers trembling, and Hayes knew one more moment would let loose sharp words unless he immediately came up with something. The opponent's voice cracked as he wondered if the woman was sane now that he, a holder of an honorary title, was here, and the air trembled with the feeling that it was about to begin. Deep down she felt a tightening, and soon her whole struggle would come down to one thing, defeating him and no longer hesitating. Her words hung in the air as she asked whether the boys could tell how strong she was. Dai only blinked in confusion. The idea felt out of reach, like a distant flash on the horizon. One wrong move and it's over. A fatal blow wipes away hope and leaves only empty silence. The commander saw Guy holding her close, afraid of losing her, because they were only ragged traveling mages and their power paled next to real might. Real foolishness or masterful play, he did not even recognize himself because he was supposed to lose, and the main goal was to gain what would let him show strength without a cruel battle. His eyes landed on the statue of Manes, towering over the city, and he silently entrusted it with an important message. The commander's anger flared, but Hannah calmly and confidently stopped him, saying there was no point in worrying because she had a unique mithril alloy, a true shield that not even an enemy blade could touch. Strength in his hands, the cold stone finally split, crumbling into pieces under a dull crash. Given their views, they decided to let her join the fight. A spark of agreement lit in Iris's eyes, and she nodded happily. The statue of Mitrila shattered into pieces, and a wave of its power swept far away, stirring everything and changing the course of events like wind blowing dust off the road. Knight tightened his chest with shame. Fighting a little girl felt wrong. Let her choose, and now everything is in Guy's hands. It was hard not to notice that the excuse was almost art, and he hid his strength so skillfully it was striking. The commander glanced. Guy was ready to fight, and the Ghani had already received orders. The enemy lifted his eyes greedily, waved his hand to beckon closer, and a fire of power flared in his gaze, about to break free. The enemy's power had grown, yet Hayes still had not seen a single spell, and if he can hide them, this mage's skill is truly spine-tingling. The king's order not to touch Ghani flashed through his mind, and the commander, clenching his jaw, said briefly that if you didn't hear it, it's your own fault. The enemy's weapon broke into ringing shards as it struck the opponent's body, and sprays of blood and a sharp metallic smell cut the air. Consciousness remained clouded, and the enchanted clothing shimmered coldly, preventing even a scratch, as mages were used to trusting their belongings to charms that quietly whispered protection. When his turn came, he asked them not to make strange sounds because Hai was smirking, then dropped the plow to the ground. The enemy's fists still rise, though each move is more an effort to hold on, and the protagonist feels this is a fight ruled by despair. But true victory will come only when the opponent finally breaks. The enemy still had no thought of surrender, and his gaze held a stubborn, pent-up anger, as if hope was still alive. He had no secret strength, only painful disappointment, and the enemy, though weak, fought to his last breath, showing desperate courage. Confidence flared inside. His will was strong because Hai would not let his pain show, but his look made it clear that everything had already been read between the lines. A quiet question lingers about whether the commander now recognizes you as a living being that breathes and beats beside him. No way! The words echo in the air, and the thought keeps turning that they could not have expected only one enemy on this road, so may they not be caught by surprise. An order rings out. Gerald must meet them in battle, because anyone who aims for the 11th rank must prove their strength, and this group will not breathe freely until victory. The way he pushed Ural into a fight with Guy shocked him, Yet his curiosity about the girl's strength stayed, and she was sure the arena would be ruined in an instant. He soothed her in a gentle voice and told her not to worry. If it became dangerous, people would immediately form a tight barrier around them and the fight would follow their rules. Day, with a curious look, admitted it would be interesting to see her return because he genuinely wanted to hear her opinion. She avoided conflict. Her heart trembled because she knew it was impossible to win against her, and any attempt would only destroy hopes. The moment he thought to test her abilities, the jury, like a cloud of anger, turned on him as one, leaving no chance to defend himself. "Don't hold back!" the order came. "If you're not at full strength, they won't let you into the fight, and he will be denied the chance to compete." Smoke and shouting filled the air as the fight to win back what was lost began, every move driven by the urge to take it back. Guy is so eager to form a group that his gaze is sharp, and every movement feels like a test, so you must clearly show him you are sincere. Amid the clash of swords and the crowd's shouts, Minaz demanded no half measures, only full commitment, and if anyone cheated, he immediately ended the game, tolerating no deceit. Guys demanded an all-out attack, wanting to see for himself what she could do, while the girl deep down doubted she had enough strength to win. Honestly, they gladly avoid confrontations, choosing silence and calm over the sting of an argument. The commander allowed them to unleash their fury, and they could have wiped this place off the face of the earth. But Minaz suddenly begged them to stay. A command goes out to summon knights of the 7th rank and higher immediately, and they are ready to rush into the fierce chaos of battle. The chance to create a barrier had already passed, and confidence filled the air and his heart would give in later. The author said firmly that the decision stands, and experience and inner strength prevent backing down. This is only the beginning, and when you learn to hold magic in your own hands, the advantage comes naturally as a gentle breath of power at your side. Compress magic into a blade and the spell becomes stronger. Juril senses how much endurance it requires, and writer whispers in wonder that only years of training give this rare power and skill. Guy said this technique awakens primal magic, but in its forbidden form it can grant even greater power, and that is what he seeks, dreaming of the strength he could gain by joining the souls of several mages. Strength comes from what we already have, and simple things turn into real achievements when we look more closely. The commander cut him off sharply and asked why the operation was still stalled, and why all the mages stood as if enchanted, silent, alert, with worry in their eyes. Gaia's heard from the person who had put so much effort into the barrier that the work could have been finished in a moment, but wizards prefer to take their time and weigh every detail, Ural added. In the dead of night, alarming reports say the barrier is almost empty, and the silence feels strangely tense. Construction finished. An order came to raise the barrier immediately, and Minovs warned to stay ready because they might need to act even faster. The shockwave is about to smash through the barrier, and suddenly a wild urge flares in the chest to destroy the enemy, not to duel but to kill, without mercy or thought. I urged we stop, because there was a hint of danger in the air, and trouble was waiting around the corner. Caution is good, but the commander's death didn't bother him. Gerald said quietly that no one would give permission then. Magic came alive in the air, and Lady Gerald's intricate circles, like a dawn spiderweb, made the nights freeze. While at the center, a comet flashed on its first flight through the night. A comet slams into the sky with a roar, its heat stronger than ever, and everyone realizes someone deliberately summoned this fiery star and it will burn everything around. A bitter taste of defeat squeezed her chest. The enemy had seen the spell, and no one had yet stopped such power. So she calls a comrade for help and whispers a name through the anxious beat of her heart. Confidence roared inside Haya, and she could tear everything around to pieces, but only a man standing opposite put her power in check. Grimace snapped an order to strengthen the barrier immediately, and the air trembled from his voice like the touch of a storm. The barrier creaked under the wind's pressure, and the commander demanded impatiently, "Restore the defenses immediately, or everything will be destroyed." A stranger stood on the old path as if rooted to the spot, while leaves rustled and the air smelled fresh after the rain. The spell took weeks to prepare, and she pulled it off in an instant, not a second wasted, but he did not flinch or show surprise, and that hurt her pride though she stayed silent. The time to act had come, and Ural offered him a chance to touch his dream. A mysterious artifact gleamed in his palm. The boy received this first gift of fate, and she heard an echo of mystery in it. His spells trail like thick smoke, but the artifact he invented tears the words apart like lightning. Ural said admiringly that it was truly brilliant. Every move is measured, a style built for duels with strong opponents, and for her, it could be the key to a magical advantage like a cold wind before a storm. The spell shot up, anger flaring in the girl's eyes, and the commander sternly warned that one more mistake like this would let victory slip through their fingers like sand. As one spell rose to its peak, another formed in the air, and Ural realized it was a layered attack, so she fixed her gaze on the trembling magic circles. A question rang out about what the circles meant, while the girl wondered if he could choose the right spell, and even while hiding her power she felt it, catching the pulse of the monoflot. While the spell still breathes with power, let them whisper over the task, and he has already filled it with hellfire. Unable to tell which spell was affecting her, Uriel's hand snapped around the magic wand and, without hesitation, flared with a deflecting beam. Next time, make sure she returns them. It's important, please don't forget. Gerald keenly sensed the spell approaching, and in an instant he moved as if the air itself guided his every step. From her, he expected only a crumb. But the boy erupted beside him like a sudden burst, and the air trembled as the space lit up with new colors. Something unknown appeared in the middle of the barrier, and the knights froze, feeling no footsteps or rustle, only a mysterious power standing before them. Without a rank, he realized the smartest move was to step back, leave a light footprint on the soft earth, and fade into the morning mist. Geralt, please do not fall back. Strike and let your sword sing in the air. The fact that she was still on her feet was already a victory, he thought, breathing in the sharp taste of fatigue and hope. Already tensed for the strike and expecting her turn, she suddenly felt his attack continue. He had no intention of stopping. Forgetting the spell, the girl hung on every word while Guy quietly urged them to let it be, saying, "Creating a mark is hard and takes time, and it is better to put up a protective barrier." And Ural thought it was a sign from the sky like a falling meteor. The commander spoke with cold confidence that the meteorite's fall was the start of the Uriel curse, and Guy only confirmed all the worst expectations by showing his helplessness. Confidently smiling, despite his lack of experience, he spoke as if he had seen the world in every detail, and a meteor storm over Lyman swept faster than thunder, making Ural realize something powerful was in the boy's hands. Even a burning meteorite would smash against her wall of confidence. He said softly that the spell does not weaken, that it is unchanging like the night wind's breath and keeps its power until the last moment. A loud explosion ripped through the night and struck her chest as surprise washed over her and a real meteorite glittered right in front of her. The commander stared, confused, as his spell proved stronger than the blinding star over Jurl's, and the knights, sensing inevitable doom, fled in desperation. Gaius squeezed magical energy into a narrow ring and the spell cut through the air like a bolt of starlight as Uriel held her breath and realized she still had to learn to control this fire while the blast's wild force already swallowed sound and light. Sanders's barrier shattered into pieces, and Mainov's, a traveling mage, went pale with surprise as the mithril statue surged toward him on a howling wind. Right above Commander Uriel Luck seemed to pass by, and Gaius cast his spell so precisely as if he sensed its power, leaving only a spark of magic for protection. And the girl couldn't stop thinking that this was how she had been saved. The lesson from that fight stayed in her memory as warmth and bitterness, and it taught her that breaking spells is easier when you understand their nature, because speed and strategy matter more than brute force. The knights waited for the meteor shower, but did not know a meteorite would fall. If he had not warned her, her life would have sunk into doubt and might not have been saved from a lightning strike. A spell delay is a wizard's clever trick to distract an enemy, but weak magic cannot win a real fight, he said, squinting and clenching his fists. Thoughts raced through his head as he searched for a way to deliver a decisive blow and to find how the power was hidden. Without a victory, he would not have recognized his group, the boy replied, and the battle still raged around them as Mina had already given the team permission to act. Permission fell into his hands, and the order to leave came immediately, and a sweet ache filled Hayes's chest because his wish had already come true. A soft question rose, asking if they could take one more look at magic now that everything around seemed to have gone dark, and the commander only muttered that there had been enough spells. Everything had waited too long. Stopping made no sense, and Maynaz spoke up loudly, waking the silence. The spell drew Petty out of the shadows. The commander froze, grimacing in pain, and the knights ran off looking for a doctor, leaving a sharp scent of fear and magic in the air. Relief washed over him. He had averted the danger, but Ural was unsure whether a single voice could stop the flood of decisions. And Iris, as if for the first time, realized she was already here in the new world. Outside, the day is coming, and the knight softly whispered an apology, hoping to win the dawn's heart again. The messenger said the king was eager to see the guests and invited them into the very heart of royal power, where the walls still held whispers of past triumphs. Most likely it happened yesterday, but the knight did not rush to blame anyone and instead wrapped everything in calm. Commander Minoza overstepped his authority, it was acknowledged. Sincere apologies followed, and the day after the storm seemed to wake with the scent of reconciliation. His words of thanks faded into the air like a soft whisper, and no one caught their meaning among the other voices. He was a master of politics but lacked strength and resolve in command, and attempts to reach him vanished like smoke in the wind. Their words made it clear how to deal with him, and the governor asked Minos quietly if Mr. Gaze had already received everything he wanted to know. He sighed and admitted he was sorry for everything, but he could never have stopped his friend from forming the band, and the king never understood what those words meant. They let some minor mage take 2 11th-level mages, which was a painful loss for the kingdom, but Guy stayed stubborn as flint, and reaching an agreement with him was almost impossible. For a moment, everything fell silent. The king quietly asked for the room, and even the air held its breath waiting for an answer. A crafty plan formed in his head: prevent the group from forming and drive the stranger out of the kingdom, and the king, with a barely restrained smile, asked if the name Guise meant anything to him. After a short pause, the king announces that Geis defeated the terrible dragon that even 2 desperate adventurers could not beat, and Minos still has not realized this. A wave of shock hit Minos when he realized that Ryder and Gerald seemed to have killed the dragon, but the true responsibility rested with him. The ruler calmly said that all the details were already in the report on the table. The commander, lowering his eyes slightly, quietly admitted he had missed that item, and now sincerely regretted it. The choice between demotion and death struck like a whip, and a frozen silence instantly burned everyone in the room. The consequences became an unbearable burden, weighing on the king as he thought he had doomed himself, while the dissenters hurled words of protest like stones at the verdict. Sent at last to a small village, A.S. felt a cold truth. This is how those who dare defy the king end up. From now on, only the authorities decide the fate of rebels. Being flattered left him doubtful, making him think it better to entrust the task to someone else. The king quietly explained it was all to keep things quiet and avoid stirring the rumors circling around. The commander took on a new task: gather the smallest scraps of information about the Brotherhood of the Burning Sky by listening to conversations and catching echoes of words in the night silence. Quiet and a bit nervous, he asked if he could also learn anything about forbidden magic from him, as if a trace of secrecy hung in the air. The king sighed. They had tried many times to put it together, but everything turned into a tangled mess, and what forbidden magic was and why it mattered remained a mystery. If something doesn't fit known theories of magic, it immediately falls into the icy grip of forbidden magic. So it seemed to him clear and straightforward, and artifacts carry an air of mystery and forbidden magic. No knowledge can reveal their nature. They slip beyond the familiar and leave only vague guesses. The secrets of his artifacts remained unsolved. Things did not go as planned, so the only choice was to enter a strange world and breathe in its mysteries. A burning urge to see the unseen lit their eyes, and together they stepped into a mysterious room where every step echoed in the silence. The sign should read Royal Treasury, the hero says, but the storeroom looks more like a dusty dump where dust kicks up in clouds with every step. Yurko blurted it out at once that it was a trap without a doubt, and his voice trembled with anxiety. The artifact rests gently in her palm, shimmering in the light while her eyes catch every scratch. She is certain it is a true national treasure, and the guide's mysterious words only add weight to its uniqueness. The island calmly asserts itself. Iris sparkles with cheerful light, and Gaev is surprised that no shadow of magic hangs over them while nearly half of what was created is just ordinary junk. The glowing stone, so easily missed in the mud, might have been hers until Gerald whispered that it was the people's true treasure. The gesture dissolves into shadow as another man walks away, almost invisible to the eye. A mirage shimmers in the air. Magic steals shapes, light dances, and ordinary words cannot capture this living wave of distortion. The world freezes when the primary law of magic appears, the brightest burst of power, its peak and culmination. Uriel felt a familiar tremor the moment the girl thought it, and he knew she had used this tactic many times when she was in the organization. A chill of anxiety ran through her. This felt like forbidden magic, and she refused to even consider using it. The artifact grants people new power. Dark magic pierces the soul, and the cold breath of death brushes the skin, making the price of a moment of power terrifying. One person, or maybe 100, can endure this trial, clenching their fists, feeling the sharp taste of fear on their lips and not taking their eyes off the darkness. It turned out the situation was not as hopeless as it first seemed, and relief came like a cool breeze in the heat. The path stretches ahead, daring him to perish or survive and keep going, as he searches for the answer in every breath of wind. Thoughts fall silent, and it becomes clear that this process weighs on the body but deeply breaks or heals the soul. And out of 100 people, only one draws in new life, and you hear their trembling, triumphant breath. An enticing opportunity drew him forward, so he stepped boldly, feeling his heart tighten with excitement and anxiety. As he prepares to tell people not to breathe the smoke, Guy suddenly feels a magical force humming inside him, washing over him and pulsing like an invisible wind. Nausea stirred under Reiter's breastbone, his stomach tightened, and he felt the moment pressing on even Guy's nerves while Euro tried to explain. This was no ordinary magic, and it gave off a chill and a faint smell of ozone that mixed with an uneasy flutter in the air. My heart tightened with worry. The boy's looks showed something was wrong. Something hurt deeper than it seemed. Magic burns the soul, strips away the human and fills it with stars, and one more step turns a person into a being of light, alien to the old world. The phrase, less human, took on meaning when members of the gay community confidently came out from behind the curtains onto the stage, simply and proudly under the spotlights and the hush of the audience. Magic condensed into sparkling energy, the very fusion Uriel had once wanted now summoned with a light flick of his fingers, and Reiter silently thought that not every master could perform such a miracle. The last step is simple. Just aim and pull the trigger, as Guy always said. Nothing extra, only the shot and the damp smell of gunpowder in the air. We must warn everyone, because if primal magic escaped control, the kingdom would simply dissolve into the world like smoke in the morning wind. Leave fear behind. Nothing here is threatening. Everything around is calm, like still water in the moonlight. A flash of magic lit the sky, and Uriel believed he had tamed the element right then, feeling its flow in his heart, while Guy only whispered that they should just watch and not disturb the miracle. A faint, unfamiliar glow touched the space, and in its dim light the figure of Iris barely appeared as the boys shifted from foot to foot, not knowing where this strange sight had come from. A realization ran through him, and according to Raider, it was another strange miracle of Guy's magic, while Iris whispered in despair that this horror must finally end. A flash of primal magic trembled, ready to explode into sparks at any moment, so Guy instantly ordered it dispelled. Utter darkness surrounds the object. Gravity is squeezed to its limit and light is bound to fade. He remembered that forbidden magic could compress energy like this, but what he saw went beyond his dreams. The pull was so strong that even light disappeared into the dark. Dea whispered his guess that a real black hole made by his hands stood before him. Forbidden magic tempted him and burned in his thoughts, so Guy decided it was enough, no more was needed, and the secret was already in his hands. Shock ran through him. The incredible, terrifying force obeyed him. He did not know how it worked, but he was sure Guy had gained real power. A barely audible voice said, "Yes, it's me." And those words carried both calm and unease, like the wind bidding farewell to the last breath of evening. Find even more forbidden artifacts. Catch the dark power in your palm and learn to control it, feeling a chill run across your skin. Determination burned inside him, and he was ready to walk through fire and night to find true power. It was hard to believe how quickly that power obeyed him, and Hai calmly explained that he had once studied souls, immersed himself in them as if he were cleaning his own soul. And so everything became simple. Iris shook her head and quietly asked why he had done that, his voice holding a hint of dreams as he rewrote his trail, though to her it all looked like playing with paints on a canvas. Forbidden magic has filled their blood and granted power, so heroes now hunt for new artifacts, snatching up every trace in the air. Uncertainty squeezes the soul. Finding them now seems impossible, and waiting for news about the brother fills the air with worry. A call to train rang out, and Deus, surprised, asked how you imagined it. Reiter caught the real intent, a trial that would reveal the full force of their strikes. A slight nod showed her agreement. After the fight, the thrill pulsed in her chest, stirring new emotions, and she burned with anticipation for the next training sessions, while Reiter smiled because it was now his turn to step into the game. Her words rang clear, a burning desire to feel the training's pulse echoing in her voice as if in an empty hall. They relaxed tight muscles and worked through his training, repeating each movement with focus and feeling their hands tremble and the warmth of tension under their skin. The next step is waiting. The heart quickens with impatience, and a faint sense of change flutters in the air. Better to train Iris first, she thought. But a shadow of doubt froze on her face, and the urge to move forward faded into uncertainty and silence. I noticed the spark in Iris's eyes had gone. The training didn't interest her at all, and she admitted quietly that the suddenness had knocked the ground out from under her and wiped out any enthusiasm. Anxiety hung in the air, and someone asked if she was okay because clear nervousness showed in her eyes. Her voice sounded confident. She was fine, and without hesitation she asked whether he would raise his hand if she did not even try. Dai's words puzzled her because he did not want to kill her, and she had already said he only wanted to drive her out of the group, yet he believed a dragon could tear anyone apart, and wanted to get rid of them now. Leaning closer, he asked whether she really wanted to eat them, and Iris only smiled slyly, shook her head, and insisted again that she would not taste them even if she wanted to very much. Among all the figures, Iris stands out for her unshakable strength, and her draconic nature keeps growing, ignoring limits, others' restrictions, and labels. Real suddenly realized his hopes for her reached the sky, and the thought lit up his eyes with a cheerful spark. A smile crossed her muzzle. It was nice to hear, but a dragon cannot sense magic. Gay left to try training, so the first sparks appear now. She watched with surprise and a quiet thrill as magic came alive in her hands, though she had told everyone she didn't know it. And he said that on the battlefield, magic is an advantage that can save lives. A harsh order rang out again. The target must be destroyed by any means necessary, and the command left his lips like a shot. Magic was a mystery to Iris, and E warned her firmly to avoid any mischief, because even her dragon's breath is full of magic and a single inhale makes the air pulse with energy. The news surprised everyone, revealing that many dragons do not realize their true power and believe magic is beyond them even though their strength lies deep inside. Assistant, have her breathe through the staff and weave her power into it, so she will feel the dragon's breath, and those memories will awaken in the tree. Iris nodded quietly, understanding everything. A hot breath of flame from the staff stunned her, and the boy sternly reminded her they were together and she had to stay where she was. The first experience may be a real test, but the girl will not back down, and her heart flutters while the spark in her eyes promises unbreakable resolve. Boldly, with a sparkle in her eyes, she leaned forward and tried to reach the target with her lips, tasting the sweetness of the competition on the tip of her tongue. Her lips touched the mark. Doubt burned her, but the first try succeeded, and Gaia could hardly believe she had come so close so quickly without seeing the road ahead. A few more failed attempts, blood pounding in the temples. Each movement hurts, but it's still too early to give up. She decided to stay out of it, even if she could feel the heat of events right beside her. The shooting wasn't at lifeless targets. The air smelled of fresh powder, and real skill came through in every move. Her skill mesmerizes, but she may not understand why the beam gets lost through her mouth on its way. The girl smiles and says shooting is child's play for a dragon. The corners of the mouth tremble in a smile. The enemy is clearly stunned and did not expect that strike. Deus glances over and whispers to turn up the heat. Interest is only beginning, and the game continues. Bright, elusive viruses whirled around, and she held her breath, trying to hide from their frantic dance. The bullet blinds his vision, so Gaze gropes for his staff, trying to snatch someone from the flickering shadows. If she willed it, everything around her would burst into flames like dry leaves struck by lightning. The choice to stop aiming and gather all his fighting strength surprised him, and Iris caught the flash in his eyes and was glad she could see it amid the tension and motion. At last, magic showed its true power. One simple act changed everything, and the spell was named Irish. The girl performed magic skillfully, but it meant nothing to Guy. He quietly wrote a 0 in his notebook, and she could not understand his silence and coldness. A huge magical power demanded a price, so training became unavoidable, and doubts gnawed at the boy about whether the power would hit its mark in real combat. Iris sighed in disappointment, because it all seemed simpler to her than he had imagined. Curiosity filled the air. An experiment had matured, and he gently nudged the course of events as if playing with invisible strings. Becoming the target was her role. Guy decided to test himself, and Ryder hesitated, unwilling to compete with the girl, while the protagonist warned not to trust her appearance because her real strength was hidden inside. Certain she would exhaust herself yet still cause harm, Reuter did not suspect the terrifying power she hid beneath her calm surface. The moment he dodged the furious attack, Iris felt an inner resistance, something tickling her chest like a spring about to snap. Everything unfolded effortlessly, the movements easy to read and the gestures so clear that even the air seemed to tremble, and the girl, her heart full of hurt, begged him to stop. Massive as a wall, he pushed forward and dared anyone to retreat. The magic surge hit harder than before. Even Ryder could hardly withstand it. Iris held her breath as doubts scorched her thoughts. Guys stayed calm and trusted himself, and Ryder, dreaming of triumph, suddenly released the wandering blade. The spell flashed with a sharp light, but he cut through it and rolled away from Gerald's sudden strike, and a thought had already formed in his heart. Magic can be far stronger than it seems. He never imagined, not even in his dreams, that reality would slap him like that and make his heart thud in a dull, ordinary rhythm. The air seems to tremble. No ordinary person can pull off such a trick. Ryder, unaware, pours strange magic into the blade as he cuts through enemy spells, and it looks almost natural. His moment comes. A cane suddenly appears in his hand. The wood cracks in the air and tension cuts through the silence. The staff in his hand channels a surge of power straight at Iris, the air flaring and the whisper of lightning running around, a candy on her cheek. Her gaze showed no danger, and the boy already realized that none of Ryder's tricks had yet moved Iris and the weapon remained in her hands. Words spilled from her lips as if magic pushed them forward, though she wanted to remain silent. Her heart pounded wildly as a staff flashed in her hand, and magic, like a silver stream, poured through it and shimmered ever brighter in Dia's eyes. A powerful strike like thunder raises dust and can knock down even the hands that made it. Joy flowed through her as the power finally yielded to her lightest touch. It suddenly became clear that the plan had failed, but the guy's representatives looked confident, since his footsteps had split her in two. Words stuck in her throat, and gripping the staff she realized silence could no longer protect her. A clever plan forced her to act, one the smartest people would not have thought of, and Reuter did not trust her resolve and relied only on himself. If the candy was still hiding in the pocket, a hand slowly pulled it out and held it forward, and the sweet scent immediately filled the air. A feeling of happiness filled them, because they had become one team. Guy filled the air with magic and the mission was complete. But Gerald still cast a shadow of mystery that even Ryder could not grasp, and Iris burned brighter every day. Endless space is filled with spirits of fiery stars that grow in power as they consume the energy of the defeated, and they exist for eternity, flaring with heat or the quiet of shadows. Victors who have tasted the glory of battle many times surpass even the gods in strength and wisdom, and the air is filled with the spirit of their might. Not a single gay person could touch him, and the reader's mana faded, leaving a dry taste in the mouth and a nervous heartbeat beneath the ribs. He hadn't expected such a gap between them, And with the clock ticking mercilessly, the only move is to play their hidden trump card. Dust kicks up from the dragon's wings, Iris clenches her fists, and they're meant to save the world together, though the air is full of worry and hope. Bowing slightly and speaking politely, the geishas addressed Mistress Iris and requested that she say at least a few words, their voices full of sincere respect. The enemy lay defeated, and no one matched her. Gaia felt it was pointless to teach her because she had outgrown his lessons, and as Jural said, only the best was expected of her. The evening promised to be special, a banquet with a tender swan, the scent of spices and golden candlelight, all for her alone, Vera. Ryder's brilliant plan smolders somewhere in a corner of her memory, but she only remembers his name when her thought drifts to Kay. Colorful candies seemed to fill my palms, but the sweet scent quickly faded and everything turned out to be a trembling echo of a dream. The author also showed no mercy, saying there was no point in disturbing the dream's magical calm, and that she bit so hard it left a mark on the skin, even surprising Ural. Looking ahead, he wondered where their path would lead, since the gay community wanted all of this to be seen, not hidden, but open and filled with hope and worry. During the battle he tried to surprise them, the girl immediately caught the batiste scent of the old observatory, and the boy whispered with delight about the amazing power of their magical telescope. A vision of power will open to them, pouring like the warm light of star spirits, and the air will tremble with the distant whisper of cosmic fires. A cold fire of stars burned in his gaze, and every movement echoed the whisper of distant galaxies. Guy said the cosmos swarms with spirits. Their fierce battles in the endless dark last longer than a minute, as if the rumble of distant thunder never fades in the night. More than 1 billion years washed over his thoughts like a cold shower, and the boy held his breath at the discovery. Far ahead, spirits flicker, hidden almost 200,000 light-years away, and the young man nodded and suggested they stop and gaze into that enchanting fairy tale distance. A gleam caught my eye. The souls of the stars burned in the dark, and in that moment the sight that stirred my soul made me want to share the whole world. From here you can see objects blinking as far as 200,000 light-years, and space unfolds before your eyes, revealing indescribable distances and millions of whispering star secrets. The power of this place is overwhelming, and Jura is only beginning to grasp its scale, so she whispered that it felt unreal. He jokes that soon Iris will fall asleep during Guy's monotonous lecture, and Guy insists there's no boredom, only curiosity in her eyes. I wanted to know what she was planning. Relator said she saw him as candy, and as soon as her words faded into a haze, she stepped forward again as if biting off a piece of her victim. Words leave the lips simply and clearly, so everyone in the room feels their meaning, as if a ray touched their heart. Awareness did not come. The children froze, their wide-open eyes taking in the strange space, absorbing every shadow and every rustle as the world shifted around them. Suddenly, the telescope image came alive before them, and a strange creature brushed past with the tip of its wing, leaving a soft rustle and a faint echo of wonder in the air. Only the creature's spirits remained, glowing in the dusk like tiger flames and smelling of ash from distant worlds. A slight change in size made them easier to perceive, and this change is about to sweep through the whole plot, touching every detail. Surprise flooded him when he swallowed her in a single bite, and the gay men quietly said this was a conscious choice. Around this planet other spirits drift too, just as powerful and uncontrollable, and a single breath from them makes the air shudder. Countless spaces opened before him. A soft breeze touched his cheek, and the world suddenly split into thousands of unseen paths. A distance of 200,000 light-years has not erased the phenomenon's powerful imprint, and it is still gaining strength before reaching its goal. Sometimes someone else's story grips you so completely that the world around you disappears. Voices go quiet, and only the story flickers before your eyes. Thoughts turn to the nature of power in the vastness of the stars, and to how to gain the strength that will shield against storms, cosmic cold, and unknown trials. Their minds are like a clear, starry sky high above, where thoughts fly freely, and breathing is easy. They still have a long way to go up the stairs before they get to my level. Everyone viewed the boys with mild skepticism, thinking that without preparation they would not even scare a shadow, and Gaius doubted they could handle a weak spirit. Weakness is only a shadow in chaos, and those once called helpless were long ago swallowed by the stronger who endured billions of years of struggle and survival. Only the highest magic lets you feel their power. There is no other way, and the air here trembles with enchanted tension. Only the highest magic of the Brotherhood of the Burning Star could save them, and the thought burned in the air like an invisible flame. Spirit magic is completely different. Its power does not fade after death, and people say the Brotherhood was lucky to find the body of a spirit that brought the scent of an untamed foreign power into their world. V stood, the air around him barely moving. They had found a way to pull out the highest human magic and lock it into artifacts like the ones he had owned before. They can give objects unusual strength and make them by the dozen, and touching one is enough to feel the artifact's power. Victory over the small shadow of the sealed spirit is the new trial, the air heavy with tension and a fading fever. The Brotherhood's layers hide the names of those who mastered magic, and the smell of old manuscripts mixes with whispers about the artifacts they created. A feeling tightened his chest. He wanted only one thing, for them to belong to him and to no one else. "The kingdom will send a report soon," she promised. But if only they could find at least one of their storehouses nearby. Deus nodded in agreement, backing that idea. In the quiet of his own room, he invited them in and quietly asked how they were, making it feel like a warm invitation into his space. The magic of discovery hung in the air, and Ryder was sure that once the head of security learned the truth, it would jolt his confidence. A slight tremor in his voice, an apology in every word, the boy politely asks permission to disappear, as if the air were about to pull him into an invisible portal. Asked if the treasure pleased the Lord. Guy nodded. Deep inside lay an object soaked in forbidden magic, and the king, hearing this, broke into a satisfied smile. Without his intervention, the royal walls would already have turned to ash under the hot breath of the dragon lynch. Paying for such a trifle would be a waste, he decided. If a new need comes up, he'll have to handle it himself. Forbidden magic is all he cares about, and Guy searches for an answer about whether he has gathered the whole truth about the Brotherhood as he ordered. The ruler said the data collection continues today at a level opened long ago, and every fact is checked very carefully to detect any hidden lies. An unusual man caught the king's eye, noted how grand the lair was, and decided the ban was likely imposed with Lyman himself involved. The list was drawn up, and it seemed unlikely anything could be found where they had searched. The ruler shrugged. The place had been scrubbed spotless, and not even a trace of evidence remained. The king said they were only checking the truth of the words, but the boy was alarmed because the soldiers sent to scout did not return, and a tense silence fell over the castle. The thought that the soldiers would not return made him shudder, as if something unspeakable had happened, and a troubling truth surrounded it. Deciding to set out alone, he went to the Tsar and received a map given as a token of thanks, smelling of old paper and rustling under his fingers. A cold indifference settled between them, as if all those words and the heavy truth he had revealed to them had never existed. The map showed the path would take them straight to Lair. Ural could hardly wait to hear the king's words. His heart tightened in anticipation. Lyman's arrival coincided with the discovery of the Brotherhood's ruined lair, but Gaius only smiled skeptically. His weak, forbidden magic couldn't have created anything like that, and he had acquired it himself almost by accident. The trail stretches 5 kilometers and 20 meters, and strange streams of mana pulse in the air, reaching out and tickling the skin, but Raider could not fully gauge their strength at that distance. An unmoving shadow crouched by the old tree, and Roy felt anxiety like a cold wind creep into his chest, as if disaster was about to strike and the stranger's mana seemed to melt into the evening shadows. Jarrell looked surprised, wondering how the boys could think the rider had caught something when he returned empty-handed. Guy stressed they were much stronger than they seemed and even outclassed that pair. The boys felt a sudden aching shock, and Ryder, holding his breath, longed for the meeting. Guy felt sure. The man moved like he had been born with a sword, and Jural watched, admiring how easily he had mastered the fighting art. The thought that enemies might recognize her in dragon form flashed through her mind, and Gaius, smiling crookedly, said no one could miss a giant dragon, and told her to learn to fight like a human. Doubt filled every breath as they considered facing stronger enemies, while gay men saw those enemies as a prime chance to hone their skills. The enemies are ready and about to charge, but hope remains that the guys will get everyone out of the trap. A step was taken, but nothing moves forward, as if time stopped, and a thought drills in about what these people are planning. The gaze holds a threat, but warmth and friendliness show in the smile, slightly hidden like the sun behind clouds. Facing a battle mage who followed the rules was impossible. The trick would be exposed, and the judges would instantly turn their attention. A question was raised about whether people like her had left the organization, and Guy, going quiet and thinking, felt that was possible, but they would not have vanished without a trace. They would have at least done something. Be the first to reach out with a warm hand, Gay dared to say to everyone who looked his way, ready to melt the ice between them. With a hint of curiosity in his voice, he asked what had drawn him here to this lonely wasteland where even the wind seems silent. Hungry with his gut clenched, Remains set out to find prey, guided by Gaia, who said two beasts like satanic bulls were grazing nearby, and he had just reached them. The monsters are a kilometer away, a dim haze on the horizon, a dull rumble barely reaching from there, as if the earth shudders from their footsteps. The third marker fires far and true, dropping enemies before it even moves, the shot cutting the air, and the position stays unchanged. A thought flashed that the monsters might have escaped, but the mage would have tried to wipe them from the face of the earth. There are almost no people here, and no encounter comes to mind. His gaze showed no trace of hostility, only quiet confidence and calm, as if a friendly warrior stood before them, coming in peace. The spell came as a whisper and flew through the air like a taut wind, touching its target with pulsing energy. A last-second jump saved him when the spell hit the stone with a hiss, and sparks flew at his feet. The body explodes into bloody pieces. The thick smell of iron hangs in the air, and the hero, deeply shaken, realizes the curse rips the victim from the inside, a truly sickening mass of meat. Spells are his element, and he knows them inside out. But he admits he avoided disaster only by a lucky break, as if fate itself winked. Cursed Bombat is useful as rain in a storm, but its pain burns with unbearable fire, and a whisper in the air asks who dared to breathe this fury into the world. You should not answer with another question, he insisted, though he had sown the doubt himself. And now that did not matter because he had promised he would answer. The Brotherhood of Burning Stars has probably already erased memories of me, and the dead are needed more than anyone, even when they are forgotten. The enemy aimed a blood-stained spear at the most vulnerable. A streak of death cut through the air. Cold metal split the silence, and the smell of iron filled the air. Dread spread around. Iris clenched her fists in searing pain, and one thought raged in her head, asking why everything had come to this and where it had come from. A protective spell flashed through the air, confusing the enemy, and the killing blow stalled for a moment, surprising Guy because Iris had never called such powers before. This spell kills people, but against the dragon its power fades like a spark in a strong wind. Adults doubted Guy's abilities, saying two experienced adventurers had barely handled the task before, but Guy was sure he knew everything about Gerald and Ryder. Or maybe he had misinterpreted something. Stubbornness in his heart made him feel his strength faded next to the other's might. Magic trembled in the air, pulsed through the skin and cut into the very soul, yet remained as mysterious as the scent of rain before a storm. The opponent said firmly, "Stop, period." Silence spread through the room. Uttering meat grinder. He wondered whether forbidden magic had changed the mage or whether the mage had always been like that, and with that feeling he left and let him continue his magic. The ideal training opponent appears when a group issues a challenge, sparks fly, and Iris stands ready to jump into the fight and change the course of the match. A sudden decision to fight, despite Iris's restrained sigh, filled her with anxiety because such clashes upset her and made her feel like an outsider. When someone first received the sign, the enemy dismissed them as a prankster and used them as an easy sparring partner in their training. The idea of sending enemies to another world has been there for a long time, but now Ryder no longer rushes into battle without thinking, listening for his comrade's steps and moving like a predator in the dark. The wait is over. In a moment, Gerald and Raider will rush forward, and he no longer hesitates and goes with them. He strikes instantly to stop the enemy while desperately defending, and Ural and Iris attack together from a distance, surprise crossing their faces, and the newcomer's coordination is impressive. A meteorite fell with a roar and a burning flash that tore the night, and Iris seized the moment as Stranger's footsteps vanished in dust and smoke. It looked like the strike hit the target, but Ryder felt doubt. The enemy seemed hidden behind an invisible shield, and Gaius noticed it too. Not a single scratch touched his skin. Her magic is a mystery to the enemy, and the new spell is not spoken in a human voice, shimmering with shadow and cold, as if the air itself is filled with another power. Experience taught him how to stop the attack. His movements were confident and precise. The raider had not yet trained with those who seemed weaker. The enemy may seem unshakable, but is full of doubt and fear. The Ural's spell is driven back, and Iris meanwhile receives so many surprises that her heart grows still with worry. Dragonfire and her power fused into one. The spell is not perfect yet, but once it appears, the enemy is forced to commit all their forces to defense, gasping in the heat of battle. The strategy's logic seemed to stretch out before them, but Gaius did not really trust it, and a faint doubt stirred deep in his heart. It is important to keep this strategy for a long time, but anxiety fills the air as the enemy prepares a new move, and the silence is taut like a string before a storm. The opponent smiled slyly, ready to play a dangerous game that challenged the tense air. The third sign challenged the fourth. Sparks filled the air, but Gaia felt only a tingling sense of provocation, not a real fight. Merriment flashed in his eyes as he tried to cheer up the enemy, but instead of a smile, the battle mage shouted "Fool" after him, and a bright ball of light cut through the air. The ball of lightning is an electric spell strong enough to paralyze muscles, but it won't stop Ryder, and in close combat even the smallest movement can decide the outcome. An electric orb flashed. The enemy threw it without warning, and Ryder immediately understood his plan, tension hanging in the air like a rain cloud over the field. The spell didn't stop Ryder's heart, but it froze his body like ice, and in the trembling silence of close combat, a single moment can decide everything. Ryder swung his sword hard, nearly touching his opponent, but the foe slipped aside, and a tense hush fell over the arena as every move held everyone rapt. Iris watched every movement in amazement as Ural showed his scars and explained that healing runes would step in. So, if a wound was not fatal, he would always get back up. And as a backup, he could recover while sitting in silence. Even the flicker of anxiety on his face was part of a subtle game, and he did not know how skillfully he misled the enemy, forgetting his own limits. The plan was clear, but the enemy slid aside like a shadow and immediately rushed back into the fight. Life will not lure him into that trap again, especially after Ryder all too often stared at the monitor as that old, burning wound healed. It becomes clear that caution is a rare visitor in this crowd, as people rush by without stopping and ignore the warning bells in the air. The taste of victory filled the air, and another brilliant victory joined their streak of luck. The enemy desperately spent mana to block Iris's fire attacks and lunged at Ryder to keep her from a fatal blow, every move charged with tension and hunger for victory. In a magical duel, only someone who strips an enemy of mana can win. Iris's spell had once burned the opponent's power, but Gaia doubted they would be that lucky again. Tension hung in the air like the calm before a storm, everyone waiting to see who would step forward and land the decisive blow. Trying to deceive him again was useless. When the ball of lightning left Guy's hands, he knew every move Ryder would make, and the second strike landed perfectly, without the slightest flaw. He realized Ryder could charge weapons with magic that burned spells, and when he first caught a lightning bolt, the enemy had no idea what power he was summoning. Allowing the enemy to strike first is a risk that hangs in the air like a held breath, and he may already have something else hidden up his sleeve. The enemy issued a challenge, an immediate duel to slash at each other in the very heart of the field where even the dust had not yet settled. The muse's first breath is like a sip of spring air as two rivals, nervous and with a spark in their eyes, lock eyes. Harold heard her quiet confession. She would help, but first, she had to strike Ryder. Confusion tightened her chest, and she would act only if he lost. Magic is her last refuge, and everything around goes quiet while only hope pulses in the damp air. Even if Iris hit Ryder, his death is uncertain, and Guy knows nothing about his wounds, so acting now is like walking blind in the dark. Everyone rushes to help, but no one has the knowledge. Confidence in victory pulsed through every move, arms snapped forward, and the hall was instantly filled with the tension of a decisive strike. The enemy hit Ryder with a lightning strike, but Deus smashed him, and he realized Geralt and Ryder were strong, yet all their blows were meant for monsters, not people. Muscles tense, a single decisive strike flashes. Simple strength can beat tough monsters, but the enemy's unique technique soon erases that advantage and makes simple force useless. Light blows fly like the wind, and whether from a killer or not, they move like air, masterfully holding control in every motion. The real battle is with people, and to Ryder it feels like the worst nightmare come true. He guards mana, breathing the hot air of battle and blocking Ryder's sword strikes, but waits for the right moment, and when it comes he flashes with energy and lands the decisive blow. Each step of the rider devours the mana, as if the horse's hooves tear the air, and with each movement strength melts like dew in the morning wind. Ryder's mana is almost gone, but the fourth banner still burns with strength, and the lead holds behind it as the wind keeps lifting the flag. Awareness pulses within him, and everything is clear down to the smallest detail like an echo in the silence of his thoughts. The enemy offered to surrender, saying there was no chance and a quick death would be better, but he waited for a safe moment to attack, and the raider quietly ordered, "Lock the doors." Surprise crept into the opponent's voice at the obvious point, while Ryder, preparing his strike, did not notice how vulnerable he had become on an open chessboard.